What's the famously the element that is missing from Guernica?
Oh,
There's no color in it. It's entirely gray and white and black. That's obviously a choice he made. This is a very hard thing to do. It's an enormous canvas. It's a political painting, which is the death knell for artists. It's the hardest thing to get away with, is doing a political painting. And it's about violence, and it's, so what does he do? He makes a stage. See, I can remember a lot of ideas in Guernica. He makes a stage. It's a box. He painted a box and had this actor's horse light bulb in it. He makes a grid on the floor so that you are drawn into this enormous space. And he made it as easy as possible for himself so he could try and do one thing that was really, really hard. That's what I'm talking about solving problems, about making these decisions. Is don't give yourself a million really difficult decisions to make all at the same time. You're probably going to fail. Okay, so I'm going to, let's see, what if I started with a color like this? Oh, by the way, I brought a bunch of colors. They're all different colors. These are some pigments that I use. Typically, I've always worked with a limited palette. But I do occasionally use colors, specific colors for specific reasons. This is, for instance, primary color. Right? In painting, this is magenta. This is one of our primaries. This is not quite the primary yellow. This one, basically, is a primary. And the third primary would be something like this. Okay? And this is the part that makes everybody mad, is when I tell them that these are the primary colors for a painter. Okay? Not red, yellow, and blue. Yellow and blue are not primary colors in painting. So if I wanted to make really bright colors from only 3 pigments, I would use something like these 3 pigments. But the problem is not usually making really bright colors. The problem is making really subtle colors. It's controlling grays, which is really hard in painting. And these aren't great. I wouldn't use any of these pigments for that, because they're very difficult to control subtle grays with. Okay, so everything has a purpose. Here is the magenta plus white. I don't use many green pigments, but these are 2 I might use. This is a cinnabar green, and this is chrome oxide green. This is a very opaque green. This is a very transparent one. Each have different purposes. Okay, so you might notice also that I have other colors with no labels on them. These are colors I mix myself. This is a green that I use most often in landscaping. It just says green on it. It's cadmium yellow, a light, and ultramarine blue mixed together. Yellow and blue don't make green, and yet here's green made out of yellow and blue. Why? Because it's much more like the green in landscape, which is always mitigated by red, because there's always a red pigment mixed together with it. So it's a green that I use because it's never brighter than the greens that I'm trying to describe. But if I'm trying to describe the color of your scarf, say, I wouldn't rely on this because it can't do that. It can't make that green. So where do I have these tubes that have no labels on them? Because I mix the colors myself and put them in the tube. Tubes look like this. Okay, they are literally just a tube, but the great invention in the 19th century was to figure out how to make an extruded aluminum tube that has a screw top on the end.
Where do you get them?
In any art store. It has to be a real art store, not Michael's. Michael's, by the way, Michael's is not an art store, if any of you don't know that. But yeah, you mix up the paint. With a palette knife, you put it in, you tamp it down really hard, you crimp it, and you take pliers, crimp it, roll it over. It's not hard. Okay, so I think I'm going to start with a color like this violet here. That still looks like a color than sky that I use kind of a lot. So maybe I'll make it a little darker. I have a few different grays. I don't use these grays very much to mix color because they have carbon in them, and carbon is very hard on colors, certain colors. It tends to dirty things. But I'm going to do it anyway. Okay, and I didn't bring brushes. I brought palette knives today. And when I'm doing these color studies, I like to use palette knives for several reasons. First of all, colorists have all noticed that it's much easier to see color relationships if there's nothing about the surface which varies the value. So in other words, if there's no, even the weave in canvas is enough for it to be hard to judge those colors. If the paint is shiny, that makes it harder to judge the color relationships. The marks left by a brush, if the paint doesn't have really good level properties, even that will confuse the color relationships. Which is why Joseph Albers' works are all paper. I mean, he wrote a whole treatise in Interaction of Color about why you should use just paper. And of course, why Matisse used paper late in his life. He would actually paint the paper himself, then use the paper to make his works of art. And this is why colorists tend to like things like silk screens. You know, Warhol loves silk screens because you get a perfect even matte color. You can control the characteristics of the surface. Lithographs, a lot of modern artists like lithographs and stuff like that. But there are a couple other reasons. You don't have to wash palette knives. So I can just go into my studio and do a color study like this and just wipe off the knife, and I don't have to clean up. And most of my life is spent cleaning up. So things like this which make you more willing to play are really, really useful. Things which make it easier for you to experiment. Okay, so if I mix these colors together, it's a little bit dead. Like I said, the carbon makes it dead, so what instead I used with a blue and a little bit of red. One of my favorite colors is cadmium red purple. You can't buy this. This is made by an Italian company. It's a very deep red. It seemed to be better at changing colors because of the dark hue. Gives you a lot of control over both hue and value at the same time. It's very expensive color, so it's not intelligent to use this to mix grays, but I do it anyway. Okay, so see now this is a little bit richer color. I'm sorry, you can't see color in here, but I have to take my word for it. Okay, so I made this a kind of a slightly bloody purplish red. So very helpful if you can use the fewest number of pigments to make a certain color, rather than using a lot of different paints, because then if you want to reproduce it, you know how. And often when I do a color study like this, it's planned for a larger painting. And so I'm going to want to be able to make exactly the same color at some point. And I'm going to put a thinner. This is an odorless thinner that's made by Gamblin, because we're inside here. And I'm going to use an alkyd-based medium.